Hi, and welcome to Georgina Blooms. I'm Kathy Bruce, your host, and we are in Ed's amazing garden. I'm standing beside something that you need to try. And wait till we go to the back. The front is beautiful flowers. The back is incredible vegetables. Please stay tuned. You won't want to miss this. Welcome back. And joining me is Ed of the Amazing Garden. Thank you very much, Ed.
Well, you're quite welcome, Kat. Good morning to you.
Good morning. I want to start with, you always get a way to grow sign, and that's from the Lake Simcoe Gardeners. And it's a front yard acknowledgement of how beautiful your front yard is.
Well,
and it is.
Well, you know, I mean, I figure here in Canada with the long winters, you should try to make your yard look appealing to your neighbors and to the general public.
And you do.
So, you know, that's all it is. And, you know, people say, well, how do you get that acknowledgement from the garden club? And I just say, well, I don't expect it. I just do my garden.
Yeah.
It's like I just keep gardening. And it's forever changing. I've been here 23 years, and it will change again. You know, as the trees get bigger and we get more shade, there probably won't be that many flowers, and then I might stop getting these awards, I guess you could call them.
I don't think so. But we're going to walk through your front garden, and you've got rudbeckia and coneflower throughout, and the rocks denote the edge of your flower bed, which are...
Yeah, they're all local,
yeah,
you know, that I picked up along in my travels.
Yeah.
And some of them are quite heavy, but I did them all by myself. And you know, you just have to be determined.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, and it's the same with the driveway, the curves in the driveway. Well, people look at that and say, well, how did you do your driveway? Well, it was just like an airport strip, like everybody else's driveway. So all I did was take my garden hose and just make a shape.
Outline.
And then I took my skill saw and I got a masonry blade for the skill saw. And it wasn't an expensive blade, maybe $8.
Yeah.
And I just cut the pavement because it's only 1.5 inches thick. And I didn't take a lot out of my driveway.
That didn't even dawn on me.
It's very easy to do.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, most people are afraid to do things.
Yeah, well, yeah,
you know?
Cutting your driveway is a big one.
You know?
But we opened the show with this black lace elderberry tree. And so you've let this grow tall.
Yeah.
And so all along when this started,
Yes.
you trim everything back as it gets older?
Yeah, I just cleaned it out so that the flowers and hostas and stuff underneath get a little bit of light, because if they don't get a little bit of light, they'll just kind of dwindle away.
Right.
So I think, and why I have the top like this, and some years it was like more parallel to the driveway, but it, you know, you got to kind of follow the growth thing.
Yeah.
But it's to give you a bit of privacy from the street.
Yep.
And then, you know, a little bit of character and color combinations of what you're growing, you know.
And so you've got
the new
a little
shoots.
sucker coming up.
Yeah.
So you'll either remove that or...
Yeah, I'll probably take that one out once it gets above the hostas, you know. But even before the hostas come out in the spring,
Yep.
Just when the tips are coming through the ground, I'll just take some mulch and cover them with a bit of mulch so they get fed during the season.
Yep.
And I don't fertilize this a lot. I might sprinkle a little bit of that chicken manure, pelleted chicken manure.
Yep.
Not much though, just, you know, just a little bit.
One shot.
Because it's powerful stuff.
Yep.
And that'll keep everything happy throughout the summer. And then once the hostas start coming out and then these get the new shoots, if you let them, it'll just turn into a purple black blob. And you won't see all this and you won't see the depth of the property.
Right.
So, you know, like I went to college for a year in London.
Yep.
and I wanted to be a designer.
Yeah.
So whether that had something to do with my,
Probably.
and we always gardened
Yep.
with my parents because we had a big family,
Yep.
and pretty much everybody had to help out in the garden.
Help out. So
So
this, when I hear all the time, if you cannot grow a Japanese maple, which Ed can grow, we're going to have a look at it. If you cannot grow Japanese maple, you can use a black lace elderberry
oh yeah.
in its replacement. But we're going to head through this little pathway.
There's also a lot of different varieties of elderberry too. You know, I have the gold and variegated one in the back there. That's old. And
Oh, okay.
I keep butchering it, but it keeps coming back, and so.
I want to, your gardens are, if they're not edged in stone, they're edged in plant material.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of repetition in your plant material, which tells me you reuse and divide. And
Well, you know, the prevailing wind comes from here,
off
usually.
the lake. Yeah.
And so what I do in the fall, once this dies back, I usually leave most of the stuff in the garden,
Okay.
and anything too big that the wind doesn't tear apart or whatever, because we get some pretty strong winds here.
Yeah.
So what happens is, and I just take the seed heads and I go like this,
Through the garden.
and yeah, just let the,
Yeah.
and then they're coming up everywhere the next year or 2 years down the road.
Yep.
I've had stuff that I planted in here 10 years ago, and the seeds didn't come, and then 10 years later, bingo,
There it
there's
is.
one of them.
Yep. Yep.
And so-
and I've talked about weed seeds.
Yeah.
You know, their garlic mustard will
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
viable for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've got a Japanese maple here, but I want to draw attention to this one and the bed.
Good. Yeah.
The bed around the bottom. This is the color is awesome. So this is the Japanese. I always forget the big long name,
Yeah.
Hako something
yeah,
grass.
it's Japanese forest grass.
Yep.
It's the easiest way to say it.
and
Heck,
Japanese
Anakoa.
fern,
Painted
fern.
And you know, all these plants come from one plant. So
Wow.
I didn't go, because
Wow.
this grass
Yes.
is very expensive now. If you want to buy a plant, if you go to Bradford Nurseries or around here,
Yeah.
you'll pay for a 4-inch
Yeah.
pot $10.
Stay tuned. We've got more. Welcome back. We are on our way to an amazing vegetable garden, but on our way, Espalier black currant.
So these here, it's just an experiment because I have a lot of garden books, and I just want to see what kind of production I can get out of this before I go to the great white heaven, you know. But it's like a hobby, you know.
Yep, a
But
work in progress.
It can turn out
Yep.
to be rather productive, and then we have beans and
Beans.
cucumbers, and I designed this all when I made my sidewalks to grow this stuff, and every
When
year
he made his sidewalks.
all this stuff is interchangeable. Last year I had tomatoes here.
Yep.
So if you get a really good year, it looks like Christmas decorations.
It
you know, when you
does.
get the tomatoes and these red runner beans, I don't know, they're not really good for eating, but when you let the beans mature and the bean itself inside, they're really big. So they're great for soups and stews. So that's why I grow them, and for the color. And then the window box and all this stuff. I made all
Which
this
you
stuff.
made, yep.
This is all scrap form ply that they were throwing in the garbage when I worked on the subway. And same with the lattices. I made it all from scrap wood. So you can make this out of branches. You don't have to get dressed lumber. You have to be creative.
Yep.
Because once the plants are growing up there, who knows what kind of wood you used.
Yep,
You know?
exactly.
So you-
this is the Christmas decoration.
you know, yeah. So in all these tomatoes I started by seed. You know?
Wow, wow.
And pretty much everything here I started by seed.
So we're now entering the back garden, which is amazing. And I'm going to just pop over here because I want you to see this row of sedum, and the veggie garden is lined, the edges are lined with sedum.
Hens and chicks.
Hens and chicks.
So I started out with a little 4-inch pot of hens and chicks, and I've been here 23 years, so I have millions of them. So this is...
And how this comes to be.
So what I because when we got these monsoon thunderstorms, it washed everything out, right? So what I did, I said, I didn't want to get any more rocks. And so I said, I got hens and chicks, so I'll start a border here with the hens and chicks. So over the years, what I do is I pull these back like this.
That's awesome. It's a solid mat.
And you know what?
Yeah.
They're pretty forgiving. You don't have to worry about it. And so then I mix my own soil from leftovers and pots and containers, because you've got to rejuvenate everything all the time. And then I pack soil in there, and then I slowly build this up over time. And I don't know how, I'll try to get it to be a foot high or whatever. And, you know, that's gardening. It's a lifetime thing. It's not 2 weeks. It's, if you want a nice garden, it takes a lifetime. And after you pass, somebody else will take it over, hopefully.
But you have to leave instruction.
Yeah, well.
So my other thing about your garden are the logs. And you have logs strewn throughout.
They're all from here, from trees I cut back, and so they wouldn't take over the whole property and shade out my garden. But that's the logs. I let them rot in the garden, in the landscape, because they hold water over time.
Yeah.
And they break down into whatever. You know?
And you've got, so the pathways are also lined with moss.
Yeah, and it's really hard for the moss because, you know, we don't get any rain. It's rained maybe once or twice here, but not very much. So I have to water everything all the time. But this has all come from one or two plants. So over time, you just take little pieces and stick it in between the rocks, and voila, you know? It's well, it looks like now, you know, 23 years later, it looks like, oh, this is, you know, this guy spent a fortune on all these plants. Well, I spent a lot of money on gardening.
Yes.
Because I really like doing it, right?
Yes. And gardening is, it can be an expensive hobby, but the nice part about perennials is that you reuse, you can divide, you can reuse. Your hens and chicks, to have come, you know, this far from a little pot is amazing, because all of your, as we move down here, Jeremiah can show everyone that your raised beds have been raised by hens and chicks.
Yeah, and they're protected from washouts. I never have a washout here, no matter how hard it rains. And sometimes my fire pit will fill up with water. There's a drain in it, but that's how heavy it rains sometimes. And I never have to go and fix my garden. Right. Sometimes a plant will get clobbered, and then I have to pull it out of the mud or whatever. But I never had a washout yet.
I want to go head down this way to your ponds.
Yeah, I got to watch your step here, eh? Because these rocks are not like city pavers.
No.
And so, you know.
So you have one on either side of your garden.
Yeah.
They're like dry river beds.
Yeah.
And your eaves troughs are emptying into each of these ponds.
There's a pipe that comes down there, goes into the pond, and where my tomatoes are here in front of the shed, you see where that river rock is, there's a pipe in there.
Okay.
So if we do get a lot of rain, that pipe will suck up the water and put it into this little catchment basin here. And then the next day, I'll harvest that water and use it in my garden.
Wow.
So I try to, you know, I don't throw anything away here.
No.
A garbage day, I have a bag. Sometimes in the winter, I put out garbage every 2 months.
Yeah.
Because in the winter it doesn't get smelly, but I have a little bag because I cook at home from scratch, and I don't buy a lot of canned stuff and processed food.
No, and given your vegetables, you're eating fresh vegetables all the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
you know.
so in this, this is, what is?
Celeriac.
Oh, okay, so it's the root.
It's the root celery. And
and you don't see that in many gardens.
no, and you see it in a grocery store, and sometimes it'll be it keeps like forever.
Yeah.
I still have 2 in my vegetable crispers in the fridge, and they're
Okay.
still edible.
Yeah.
And you can use it in salads, stews, and stuff. But it takes about 9 months. I start the
Okay.
plants in the house as soon as I get my seeds from the seed house, usually February-ish,
Yep.
and right till frost, and they'll get about this big. And in the grocery store, they're $2.99 a pound. Mine average about 3 pounds to 4 pounds, so they're $15 each if I had to buy them. But,
and they're already looking huge.
yeah,
But what I notice is you also have your perennials here. Like
Yeah,
you've got
all over.
the purple
Yeah.
liatris kind of,
Yeah.
and it also
Yeah.
brings the pollinators.
Oh
in.
yeah, you should have seen yesterday morning when I got up. I was out here at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you should have seen the bees here that early
Yeah.
in the morning.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, because I said, geez, there's not that many bees. But yesterday morning, for some reason, maybe
Yeah.
because of the weather, the storm
I
warning.
noticed that in my front garden
And there
as
was
well.
tons of bees, and they were going at it. So yeah, you got to have these things, and you get the cabbage loopers, the
Yeah.
white butterflies that destroy your cabbage.
But your cabbage doesn't look that bad at all.
No, but you know what? With the cabbage, usually they get attacked when they're small, so they look like they really got clobbered.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I have not really lost any heads of cabbage,
Okay.
because
Wow.
you just strip out the outside leaves and they look battered,
Yeah.
looks like somebody shot them with a 12 gauge. And the heads are fine,
Yeah. Yep, perfect. And that's what the outer leaves are for.
Yeah,
The
so-
other thing is, even back here, all the way along, the hens and chicks just keep coming.
Yeah.
And you've popped in coral bells into the
Heucheras, whatever I
Awesome.
have. And
Yeah.
the heucheras too, like a lot of them down there, I didn't plant them, they just seed themselves.
Wow.
So, stuff does that.
Yeah.
If you give it the opportunity.
Yes.
And anybody who's watching this video, you don't have to have a big garden.
No.
If you've got if you live in a townhouse or you live on a balcony,
Yeah.
you can grow
Anything.
stuff.
Hold that thought. We're going to move around to elsewhere in the garden. Please stay tuned. Welcome back, and we're on the other side of Ed's vegetable garden, and your kale is a showpiece of a plant,
Well, thank
both
you.
of them. And you were saying the dinosaur, the purple one, you would grow as a
Ornamental.
in your
Yeah,
front
you
bed.
can. Yeah, you can. If you're lost, like use it as like a hosta.
Yeah, absolutely,
and
absolutely.
and to showcase other plants for the colors, because not too many plants have those kind of colors.
No, and when you prepare, you were talking about preparing your
Yeah.
soil. You do it well before you actually put the plant in. So for kale,
Yeah.
you're going to plant it here, and what do you mix together?
Well, I mix some manure,
Yeah,
some peat moss,
yeah,
and if I have a little bit of compost, and I just do it by eye,
Yeah.
And you're always better to keep it weaker than too strong.
Yeah.
Don't put extra fertilizer in there, because it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
You're just wasting it, and the plant ain't going to like it, and the bacteria in the soil ain't going to like it either if you nuke it too much.
Yeah.
So I mix that all in.
Yeah.
And because you're putting the peat moss in, and wherever that plant's going to go, you dig that part in really well. You mix it in with the existing soil, and you stick your cabbage or your kale in there.
Yeah.
And because they're heavy feeders, you can see all the nitrogen in
Yeah.
the leaves and that.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a good, healthy plant that's going to be able to survive all these insect attacks and all that kind of stuff. I don't use any toxic sprays here at all.
No.
The only thing I use is diatomaceous earth.
Yep.
And I put that in my spray bottle, my hand pumper, And I'll spray my cabbage when it's getting ravaged like this to kill the caterpillars.
Yeah.
But you can eat that stuff.
Yeah.
It won't hurt you, won't hurt your pets. That's all I use. I used to make concoctions with rhubarb leaves, but that's highly toxic to insects and all the beneficials.
With oxalic acid.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to be careful what you do. See, there's another kale there, the reddish one.
Yeah.
That's
in the far.
Siberian kale.
Okay.
Okay.
They're beautiful. They're beautiful.
Look at that color.
I know.
You know, it's
and
like,
so all three of these are completely
Yeah.
different. So you chop them up,
Yeah,
pop it in the freezer, and you have it through the winter.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and it never goes bad. You
No.
know? Like
And we're-
you can put that in soup and in everything.
Stews.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You know, if you're a vegetarian, it's the kind of stuff you want to eat.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And as we move along, you've
Yeah.
got, there's a little dip here in your, I love this.
Yeah. Well,
But you've got plans for this side of the garden as
Yeah.
well.
yeah. As my yard changes over the years, if I'm still here, this will become a little parkette. And I'm going to make a little walkway through here, meander through here. I don't know what I'll do at this end of it, but I got to get in there and get out somehow.
Yeah.
So I'll carve my way through it. And like this juniper here, I got when I moved here. Okay,
So-
I got it in the bush. It was 1 foot high. It was a little green blurb up there in the bush.
Yep.
And now I just cleaned it all up because it was out to here.
Yeah.
And I trimmed it back, so I want a little bit more light in here. And I just transplanted those 2 big 8-foot cedars
Okay.
3 weeks ago. And most people would run for the hills. You can't plant a cedar like that in July, it'll burn.
Yep.
So, you know, you
And you've got a Japanese maple,
Yeah.
and I see you've got a brand new
Yeah.
baby black lace
that's
elderberry.
from the mother out there.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
So it all gets divided, and dividing perennials is super healthy for the plant as well.
Yeah.
And when people look at old junipers, I know we had one. We just yanked ours out of the ground.
A lot of people don't like them.
Yeah, but when you limb it up like this, and give it a different taste, you know, a different look. I noticed there are a couple of houses in town, they've limbed them up so
Yeah.
that they can see out their windows.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and most people are afraid
Well,
to
you
do
shouldn't
that.
be.
No, because why?
No, you know when you're pruning a tree like that, and even if you're not an arborist or every time you look at that tree, look at it and say, which branches am I going to remove?
Yeah.
What is it going to look like with the rest of the garden and landscape? And that's what I do with my Japanese maples.
Yeah.
I decide, I just don't go there and start cutting. I
Yeah.
look at it, it might take a month before I decide how I'm going to do it.
Yep.
And, you know.
So not to be afraid, and I know my husband usually.
Don't worry about that. You can't kill that stuff.
Yeah. So using mature trees and trimming them to look differently is like you've done a great job for this.
You know what, Kath? Most people let their trees grow too much,
Yeah.
and they don't prune them. And then when they have to prune them 10 years later, they have to really hit the tree hard.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
For your yard or
You've
the
got
tree.
to you've got to do maintenance on these things. They're like a car.
Yeah.
If you live in suburbia,
Yep.
you've got to keep it, you know.
I want to thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
This was awesome. Ed, you got to be on the garden tour next year. People have to see all of it.
Well,
Just say
we'll
yes.
see.
Thank you for joining us, and hope you walk away with some awesome ideas for your garden. Thanks again.
You're welcome.